It was a chilly autumn evening when Emily, Jake, and their friends decided to embark on a weekend camping trip deep into the Whispering Pines forest. The group, consisting of 6 close friends, had always been thrill seekers, often choosing remote and eerie locations for their adventures. Whispering Pines, with its dense trees and unsettling silence, was the perfect spot. As they drove through the winding roads leading to the forest, the sun began to set, casting long shadows that danced eerily on the ground. Emily, the most cautious of the group, couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in her stomach. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Come on, Emily. It's just a forest. What's the worst that could happen?" Jake replied with a grin, trying to lighten the mood. The others laughed, but the air was thick with an unspoken tension. They all knew the stories about Whispering Pines, a place where people had vanished without a trace, where the trees seemed to whisper your deepest fears. But they brushed it off as mere legend, determined to prove their bravery. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the clearing where they planned to set up camp. The area was eerily quiet, with only the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl breaking the silence. The group quickly pitched their tents and gathered around the fire, sharing stories and laughter to dispel the growing unease. As the night deepened, Emily's unease grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every crack of a twig, every rustle in the bushes, made her heart race. She glanced at Jake, who seemed oblivious to the tension. "Do you guys hear that?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The group fell silent, listening intently. At first, there was nothing but the crackling of the fire. Then, faintly, they heard it, a low, almost imperceptible whisper, like the wind carrying a voice through the trees. "What the hell is that?" Sarah, one of the friends, asked, her voice trembling. "Probably just the wind," Jake said, trying to sound confident, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. But the whispering continued, growing louder, more distinct. It was as if the forest itself was speaking to them, urging them to leave. The words were unintelligible, a maddening murmur that seemed to come from all directions. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she looked around, her eyes darting from tree to tree. That's when she saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the clearing, watching them. Her breath caught in her throat, and she nudged Jake, pointing toward the figure. Jake squinted into the darkness, his face paling when he saw it too. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice shaky. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. It just stood there, its presence suffocating, menacing. The others saw it now too, and panic began to set in. "Let's get out of here," Emily urged, her voice trembling with fear. But before they could move, the figure stepped forward, revealing itself in the dim firelight. It was a man tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to glow with an unnatural light. His clothes were tattered, covered in dirt and dried blood. In his hand, he clutched a rusty axe. Who are you?" Jake stammered, backing away. The man didn't answer. Instead, he raised the axe, his gaze fixed on the group with a look of cold, murderous intent. The friends froze, paralyzed by fear, as the man took another step forward. "Run!" Emily screamed, breaking the spell. The group scattered in different directions, their footsteps pounding against the forest floor. Emily and Jake ran together, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they tried to put as much distance between themselves and the man as possible. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees becoming a labyrinth of shadows and darkness. They could hear the others screaming in the distance, their voices cut off abruptly, leaving a chilling silence in their wake. Emily's mind raced with fear. Was the man hunting them one by one? Would they be next? "Jake, we have to keep moving," Emily urged, grabbing his hand and pulling him forward. But Jake was slowing down, his face twisted in pain. I think I twisted my ankle," he gasped, stumbling to the ground. Emily's heart sank. She couldn't leave him behind, but staying meant certain death. She looked around, desperate for a solution, when she spotted a small cave hidden among the trees. "Come on, Jake. We can hide in there," she said, helping him to his feet. They limped toward the cave, the darkness swallowing them as they entered. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as they huddled together, listening for any sign of the man. The forest was eerily silent, as if it was holding its breath, waiting. Minutes passed, then hours, or so it seemed. The cave was damp and cold, the air thick with the smell of earth and decay. Emily's mind raced with fear and exhaustion. What had they stumbled into? Who was that man, and why was he hunting them? Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a soft scraping like metal against stone. Emily's blood ran cold as she realized the man had found them. She squeezed Jake's hand, trying to remain calm, but the terror was overwhelming. The scraping grew louder, closer, until it was right outside the cave. Emily held her breath, praying the man wouldn't find them. But then the scraping stopped, replaced by a chilling, guttural laugh. "You can't hide from me," the man's voice echoed through the cave, sending shivers down Emily's spine. "I know these woods better than anyone." Emily's heart raced as she searched for a way out, but there was none. They were trapped, with only one entrance and no way to defend themselves. The man stepped into the cave, his silhouette looming in the darkness, the axe gleaming in his hand. "Please don't hurt us," Emily pleaded, tears streaming down her face. The man tilted his head, as if considering her words. But then, without warning, he lunged at Jake, swinging the axe with brutal force. Emily screamed as the blade struck, blood splattering across the cave walls. Jake's body slumped to the ground, lifeless. Emily backed away, her heart pounding in her ears, as the man turned his gaze on her. She knew there was no escape. She was going to die here, in this cursed forest, just like the others. But then, something unexpected happened. The man paused, his expression shifting from murderous rage to something almost human, regret, sorrow. He lowered the axe, his shoulders slumping as if a great weight had been lifted. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I never wanted this." Emily stared at him, her mind reeling. Was this some kind of trick? Was he toying with her before finishing the job? But the man simply turned and walked out of the cave, leaving Emily alone with Jake's body. She waited, too stunned to move, until she was sure he was gone. Then, with trembling hands, she crawled over to Jake, her tears falling onto his blood-soaked shirt. She stayed there for hours, too broken to move, until the first light of dawn filtered through the cave entrance. It was then that she realized the man had left something behind, an old, worn photograph, lying on the ground where he had stood. With shaking hands, Emily picked it up and gasped. The photograph was of a family, mother, father, and 2 children, standing in front of a small cabin. The man in the photo was younger, happier, but it was unmistakably the same man who had just killed Jake. On the back of the photo, in faded handwriting, were the words, "They took everything from me. Now I take everything from them." Emily's mind raced as she tried to piece it together. Had the man been seeking revenge for something? Had he lost his family in these woods? But before she could think further, a shadow fell across the cave entrance. She looked up, her heart stopping as she saw another figure standing there. A woman, with hollow eyes and a bloody knife in her hand. "He was never alone," the woman whispered, a twisted smile spreading across her face. The last thing Emily saw was the glint of the blade as it descended. In the end, the forest took them all, just as it had taken countless others before. Whispering Pines kept its secrets, the trees forever whispering the tales of those who dared to enter its depths and never returned.